Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and I'm really very privileged to be seated along with such, eminent personalities from the uh, uh, city gas CGD business. And I would also like to thank Team ET for giving me this chance to moderate over such a, eminent panel and discussing such an important issue. So basically, the key, I was part of the, I was just watching the last panel, and it was very informative. And I think one of the biggest, one of the takeaways, of course, was that, for this whole overall business to grow, I think CGD affordability will be, one of the major issues. So just as an icebreaker, I thought I'll take views from everyone as to where the basic drivers would be what is the underlying, gas price, which is, there for the system as a whole. And secondly, how does the government choose to distribute this gas? Basically, we know that you have this APM gas, which is the most affordable gas, and then you have other gases which are more and more expensive. So really what will be driving the overall growth of the market is the affordability, and that will be driven by the underlying gas prices, as well as how the government seeks to distribute that relatively scarce domestic APM gas among the various stakeholders. So maybe I could begin by asking Mr. Chadha your perspective on how you see the gas prices behaving over the short term. Of course, we understand it's going to be high, but how is it going to be over the medium term, and how do you see gas allocation? How has been the government's attitude towards gas distribution, particularly to your segment, and how do you see it going forward?
Thank you, Mr. Majumdar. Good afternoon, everybody. I thank the organizers for ETEnergyworld for providing an opportunity to be among here with all of you. And in fact, seeing the lineup, I think it's an excellent get-together, which we all these CGD players always think that we should have such a get-together almost every month or every quarter if it is. So thank you very much for bringing us all together. I think the pricing part has been very nicely covered in the previous session. I was party to thanks to inputs from the industry leaders. The thing is that the city gas distribution basically primarily focuses on 4 areas, which is the domestic connection, the domestic PNG, transport sector, commercial and industrial. These are the 4 areas where possibly the city gas distribution focuses in. And on a macro level, when we consider that, starting with the PNG connections, we have around 30 crore LPG connections in India, and our domestic PNG connections will reach possibly the magical figure of 1 crore. So like the screen, the canvas is very wide, so we have a lot of work to do, all the industry players which are sitting here. So I must say, historically, when we see the development of city gas distribution, and of course, for the past couple, 2 to 3 years, the commercial sector and the transportation sector were basically high margin things, and relatively the domestic PNG connection is basically a lot of infrastructure goes in, a lot of capex goes into it, and the returns are not that attractive. And in the couple of months which we have recently seen because of the price volatility, even the industrial sector has taken the brunt out of it, and the margins which were basically there for even the transport sector or the industrial sectors due to the RLNG prices and commercial sectors, they have taken a complete turnaround. Now, the thing is how far we can survive on that. So that is the moot question. So like we were hearing about the pandemic as a new normal, I think there's a new normal of very low margin in the city gas distribution. Now, we are basically now trying to ramp up the infrastructure. Thanks to the PNGRB ex-head, which is right away sitting in front of me, we have almost 98% of the country covered by the license, and all the geographical areas have been covered into that. So we have got a big platter, but the only thing is we have to increase our efficiencies. This is the new normal, and only the most efficient will be surviving. This is the sort of a mantra for the city gas distribution, because the infrastructure that is required is very, very huge.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for your perspective. Mr. Kumar, would you like to share your perspective on this?
You see, as far as CGD demand drivers is concerned, there are 2-3 factors. First is the availability of infrastructure that Mr. Chadha told our ex-chairman PNGRB. He has ensured that most of the country is covered. So we have the infrastructure. There is certain level of MWP which is there for all the companies, and they will be doing that kind of investment, and the spread of gas will be available all across the country. Then the next aspect is availability of gas. So for that, we need the LNG pricing in the range of $8 to $12. That kind of pricing will ensure that the gas is used by all the sectors. You'll be surprised to know that when I was back in GAIL, we had read about a study done by one of the consultants all across the country, wherein they had estimated all the industrial demands in the country, and that figure was 99.65 MMSCMD. This is only industrial demand, not the commercial demand, not the DPNG. So if the industrial demand can be 100 million, then short while ago we were discussing about possible demand of CGD. It can easily go up to 125, 150 million cubic meter per day in next 10 years, provided we have good pricing regime. So infrastructure, pricing regime, and then the rationale, the need to change over to gas. If there is a customer, he is already there in LPG or he is there in fuel oil, is there a need for him to change? Because he is very comfortable there. So there the regulatory, the statutory, the environmental concerns will come in. So these are my 3 points.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Mr. Jha, would you like to share your perspective?
Thank you, Sabyasachi. Taking it forward where Sanjay has left, see, this CGD industry or business, as such, it is a low margin, high volume industry. So to begin with, I mean, you have to invest, keep on investing in this business, and I mean, after a reasonable period only you can start expecting, I mean, based on the current scenario that we have in India. If you see GA after GA, you will see whole lot of cascades moving here and there, and I mean, all these things add to your bottom line. So finally, your investments, if you, what is there for you to earn out of this business is again gas pricing, and which is a very critical thing. Only solace is that government is well aware of this constraint that CGD entities are facing, and within there, I mean, whatever best they can do, I mean, they have been holding regular consultations, particularly with the ACE, which is again represented by Mr. Manglani in most of the forums. So we see that government is pretty sincere about pricing. They know that if, I mean, if they want, I mean, as per their aspirations, if they want the gas component to go to 15% and all, this is only possible if, I mean, the gas prices are under control. Second thing is, I mean, something can be, I mean, because finally domestic gas is limited, and government has also its hands tied. They cannot do much about, I mean, because of the shortage of domestic gas. So if not today, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, prices are bound to, go upward only. So then what is left for CGD entities? Again, they have to reduce their operating costs, which is only possible if the gas infrastructure is available, gas is available from a reasonable distance. As of now, what we are saying that we are bringing gas from far off locations, so that is becoming a constraint. So, these are the few points. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Mr. Manglani, would you like to share your perspective?
First of all, good afternoon, everyone, and I must thank ET for inviting us, or the ETGL, on this ET gas conclave. See, Ramanji and Sanjay ji has already covered, and Jha Sahab also supplemented. Recently, even the pricing committee report has also been submitted. India actually has seen two different worlds on a CGD side, if you see. One was very low prices, when we were purchasing at $1.79, and we saw prices shooting up to almost $40, or even the APM price going to, which is UBP, around $10 plus, and now at 8.57 or so. So I think we have seen the testimony that at the end, we need to ensure consumer gets the affordable price, PNG and CNG both. And this was the main debate, when the government constituted a committee, that when the prices had gone up in the previous committee also, this was a debate, that there was a sudden decline or the lull in the conversion of vehicles on a CNG or even on the PNG. What is being seen by the consumers is that they need a stability of an end price. And for the end price to achieve, you saw that government acted and they constituted a committee to ensure the larger masses, the CNG consumers and the PNG consumers, continue to receive the gas or a PNG and CNG at the affordable price. And on the industrial and consumer side, CGD companies have to ensure that they source a mixed portfolio, short-term, long-term, medium-term, and make a complete portfolio of continue to give the gas supply at a reasonable and affordable price. I think for a CGD, the challenge is to make sure that the prices which are being given to the consumers are more or less stabilized, so that they have a faith and confidence in the CGD system. Otherwise, we will see this kind of a volatility which we have seen. Suddenly the whole convergence of PNG CNG got quite stabilized, or lull period has come. So Sanjay has been seeing the gas prices for a very long time, and he's the expert on this matter. He has given you the indicative figure that $8 to $12.50. So what we would see that $8 to $12 for a home PNG and CNG would be on a higher side. For an industrial and commercial side, of course, we would be able to sustain with some better price gas on the portfolio. But for a home and CNG, prices have to be still moderated further down, so that we are able to provide a reasonable saving to the end consumer. Why should a consumer, you and me, or anybody, convert his vehicle to CNG, occupying the whole boot space by the cylinder? Inconvenience of a filling frequently in the CNG station. A consumer is looking for a good handsome saving of 30 to 40% vis-a-vis the alternate fuel, or a more saving. And that is justified because there is a lot of sacrifice by the consumer. On the other hand, on the PNG side, for a home, consumer is paying 6,500 rupees or 6,000 rupees for a deposit. And they are expecting that on a vis-a-vis LPG, they should get some discount on LPG side. So I think that the win for a CGD would be to maintain affordable price for both PNG and CNG, and have a good portfolio of $8 to $12 or similar prices for industrial and commercial. But for home PNG and CNG, much moderated prices for both the sectors. Thank you.
Mr. Manglani, just a follow-up on this. I mean, you rightly touched upon the fact that the usage of CNG or PNG has to be much cheaper than the alternatives, which is LPG in the case of piped gas, and motor spirits like diesel and petrol for the the CNG users. But is this there was always in the past a fairly big gap between the two prices, and we have seen that in the last year or so that spread has really narrowed. But do you see this as a short-term phenomena which has happened because of the, reason that, typically there was a fairly good, linkage between NG prices and crude prices, but for various reasons it has broken last 12 months. So do you see this delinking which has happened between the two as a short-term phenomena or something that could persist long into the future?
So I think it's a good question. You had a very good panel in the previous session.
Yes.
And in fact, they did indicate that this is going to be and they were expert of the LNG market perhaps. And they did indicate that this is going to be a temporary phenomena in 26, 27 onwards. Yeah. Everyone who's dealing with the gas business is seeing some sort of a glut of an LNG. Right. So as previous panel, they concluded that there will be moderation of prices and there will be an opportunity for all of us. Of course, some of the CGD companies, they had some long-term contract, and many of us, we did not have a very long-term contract. Because we always thought that we should be relevant to the market and we should keep sourcing a short-term or a medium-term contracts. But now, I think with this volatility which we saw, Russia-Ukraine war, or some free port going here and there, or any one event taking the whole prices to the very, very high trajectory, I think the lesson learned is that we also need to have, all of CGD companies have to have some portion of a requirement on a longer term, and we believe that we would definitely get a good window of seizing this opportunity for a longer term proportion. And then remaining like domestic PNG and CNG, we are anyway getting assured from a government of India's side that we will be getting an APM. So that a significant portion of CGD industry is getting covered through that mitigation part. What we need to manage is the industrial commercial, and which we get a good long-term contract and some portion of what we buy on a short term or a spot. I think this kind of a mix with the Brent or a JKM, 100% everybody wants to buy a Brent actually, but whether we'll be getting a Brent today is an issue, or whether we'll get a mixed portfolio is what we need to see. How do we source our gas? But if a CGD has a good decent portfolio with a multiple indexes and a multiple tenures, I think we would be able to service the consumer on a longer term basis on assured or reasonable price range.
Mr. Rai, would you like to add anything to what Mr. Manglani and others have said?
So I think coming at the end, I think most of the things that need to be said have been said. I think the only thing that I would just reiterate is the importance of the customer. Ultimately, we have to service the customer. The only person who pays money to us as a CGD company is the customer. Right? If we buy gas, it doesn't make us any money unless we can sell it and make margin. Right? If we don't make margin, that's we're not in business. And frankly, right now, whilst the established CGDs who have a lot of infrastructure in place, like the IGLs of this world, they're in a much better position than frankly the more emerging CGDs. And in the event that the market conditions don't change, a lot of companies are going to be in a lot of difficulty if these market conditions sustain. Your ability to make margin in this market is very, very difficult. You can make margin if you decide to shrink your business, but if you want to grow your business, it's not possible to grow your business and continue to make margin to make it a sustainable business. So something needs to change. Something needs to be fixed, and I think that there is a sentiment now from the committee, from government, from industry, that those changes will come and we'll end up in a better place, perhaps in the course of the next few months. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Mr. Pattanaik, would you want to add anything to this?
Good afternoon, my esteemed colleagues in the panel. And thank you, ETEnergyworld, for giving an opportunity to speak on this in front of this August gathering. While I broadly agree with all my panelists here, that for the CGD companies, there are two basic things which is required for the existence and the growth. One is the infrastructure, and the speedy development of the infrastructure, and the rationale of the pricing. If you talk like my friend Sanjay and me are two different, like we have two different categories sort of thing. There used to be an era where the GAs have been allotted pre-PNGRB or little after PNGRB, and actual speed has taken place after maybe 7th round, 8th round, and during Mr. Saraf's times, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th round. These are the CGD entities which are under development today. And a lot of things has happened coincidentally or whatever these things in the last 2 years, pandemic included in that. So at one point of time, to be very frank, today also, the question of existence of developing these new CGDs with this turbulence. I'm sure all my co-colleagues, the people those who are taken these new GAs now, in this from 8th round onwards, there's a big question mark in that. But yes, government is absolutely aware of this thing because the thrust which was given that we take 6.5% to 15% CGD was one of the main facilitators in that. And the government of India was absolutely seized of the situation. And for that, there are a lot of committees set up, the latest being the Pattanaik committee, which is submitted its draft report. We are, everybody is eagerly looking for how that is going to come, particularly for the PNG domestic sector and the CNG transportation sector, which will be the bread earner for the CGD. And as my colleague pointed out, that industrial and the commercial sector of the CGD, which is again another major segment of this. And I agree with the panelist, I agree with Suresh, that every CGD entity has to have a portfolio. And we did have a panel prior to this where we need to go for long-term contract, CGD entities included in that, to see that we have a reasonable priced portfolio with us, to see that we not only serve us, we serve the customer with a reasonable price. That's what basically we want.
Thanks. Abhilesh, you would like to add anything?
See, for this, diesel and petrol prices, government has kept them unchanged for last 6 months, providing much needed stability to this segment and controlling the inflation. But during this 6 or 8 months time, the CGD industry has faced a pricing which is from $1.79 to $8.52 now. And lot many times the CNG price has to be revised, the PNG price has to be revised, the LPG cylinder price has undergone change for not too much but slightly. The diesel petrol prices, excise duty is reduced and it has come down. So the faith of the CNG customer that CNG price is moderated and more stable than diesel and petrol price, because diesel and petrol price used to change every day earlier, right? Every day basis, 10 paisa here and there. But last 6-8 months, it is stable. Whereas CNG prices have gone up significantly. So that has taken some faith away from the customer. And that is where we need to assure. And government is controlling these prices of diesel and petrol by making some OMC suffer or some other way they are trying to manage that situation. But CNG or gas industry, city gas industry did not get that desired support. Or maybe the support is now expected, which is belated. So some damage has already been done. I think with this recommendation, if it is accepted by the government, is implemented, to some extent we can control that damage.
Thanks. So one of the things that comes out from the submissions of all my esteemed panelists, price of course will be one. The other of course will be infrastructure. So naturally, my question, the next question will be to Mr. Raman Chadha. What to update us on what's happening on the national gas grid, because one of the key things which will be important for the city gas business to spread all over the country. One of the key factors will be the development of the national gas grid. So if you can share with us what are the latest updates and developments, and where we are on the path to developing a truly national gas market.
If we go back to the previous session, I think the national gas grid was discussed in detail. What is one nation, one grid? What we have seen is basically the entire pipeline infrastructure or connectivity was mostly in the western side or northern side or central of India. And now there are some efforts going on to already from the eastern region and also to connect all the northeast. The Urja Ganga, which is being connected across the central India right towards West Bengal and then to the northeast, and all the 7 states of northeast are being connected. We see basically the total pipeline length in the country rise to around 35,000 kilometers in the next 3 to 5 years. And most of the projects are under execution, and we see that there will be increased availability of gas across the country. We also are building a new line, which is the Mumbai, Nagpur and Jharsuguda, which is again going into areas where the natural gas availability was very limited. Coming back to the city gas distribution, as we are basically the topic of today's discussion, basically the word city has become a sort of a misnomer in the CGD because since the entire country, the GAs have been redesigned sort of thing. We have Mr. Jha from IOCL here. I've seen that area. They have a GA of Visakhapatnam, Vijayanagaram, and another one more district, Srikakulam. So that GA itself spans close to around 120 or maybe 150 kilometers. So earlier the city gas distribution was limited, like we were working in the city of Sonipat. That was the municipal limit of Sonipat, and there was basically large concentration of the household connections. Mr. Sanjay will also agree, he's heading IGL, where the areas like Ghaziabad or Noida or Delhi, parts of Delhi, there is very high density of high-rise apartments. Reaching those homes was quite a thing. Like if you have the infrastructures, then the gas supplies commenced. But now, basically with the increased size of the GA, the steel infrastructure has gone very, very capital intensive, and where I think all of us, the industry leaders, are basically on one common point, that as we have a one nation, one grid, we should have one nation, one policy for laying the infrastructure as far as the network is concerned. Because ROI in these times on this current combination is very, very challenging for the city gas distribution. The committee recommendation, if implemented, will provide some sort of an oxygen to the industry. And I would agree with Mr. Sanjay that $8 to $10 when we talk, I think, again we go, the dollar itself is also becoming an issue. That's also going up. So even if we should boil down to sort of a INR per MMBTU, that will be more appropriate at this stage.
Thank you, sir. So, the other question basically, one of the question was that, there's also, talks about allowing, the policy of having greater competition, of having, multiple, marketers being allowed to operate in the same geographical area. So wanted to know how practical is it? I mean, what are the, regulatory gaps which are present, which prevents that? And whether, even from a purely economic perspective at this point, it makes sense to allow multiple operators in the same geographical area. Mr. Sanjay Kumar, could I have your perspective on this?
Yeah, before I come to that, since this has been talked, I think twice or thrice, $8 to $12 I had referred to as LNG market regime, not domestic gas market regime. And it is always assumption of a CGD player that DPNG and CNGT, which is transport and household this thing, they will come from domestic gas. Whether it is APM, non-APM, or some sort of other domestic gas which is coming from any other mechanism, you might have noted that although the LNG prices were at $30, $25, but the domestic gas prices have been available at lower prices than that. So the assumption of any CGD entity is that they will be able to get or to source gas which will come from government, come through allocation mechanism of government, and other domestic gas which can be used to market the CNG and PNG segment. And the LNG price of $8 to $12 will ensure that the whole ecosystem is being developed. You can't actually develop a CGD market only for DPNG and CNG. You have to go to industrial segment also. You have to go to commercial segment also. They should feel compelled, there should be compelling proposition to these demand centers that gas is something that we should switch over to. And there are few other things like GST, etc., which are related to that. Now, coming back to the present question by Mr. Majumdar about can there be alternate marketeers in a CGD GA? See, the geographical area that is managed by an entity, they develop certain moat around their business. It is quite a kind of small entry barrier that is developed. They have expertise, they have infrastructure, they know the ins and out of the GA. So for any new player to market in the same GA, it will be always difficult. Whether regulation-wise it is allowed or not, most of the players have challenged the regulation which was put up by Honorable PNGRB. And I'm quite sure on some day those regulations will be in place and there will be a suitable and seamless mechanism through which one can find out what will be the transportation tariff or the CNG compression charge that will be required to be paid to the player, so that third-party marketers are coming. But to me, it appears that there is a lot of entry barrier for that, and it will take, after the legal and statutory and regulatory issues are resolved, even after that, it will be difficult for a third party to market gas directly in an existing GA.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Mr. Jha, would you like to share your perspective on this? Do you broadly agree with Mr. Kumar's opinion, or you have some other thoughts on this?
I would like to add a couple of points, one related to infrastructure, creation of infrastructure. See, national gas grid as such, if you see largely on the eastern coast, it is yet to get developed, particularly like from Indian Oil side, we are doing our bit in developing facilities for evacuating our NO terminal in the form of this about 1400 kilometer pipeline NO to Tikorin, which is about to be fully commissioned now. But again, that pipeline alone cannot evacuate the entire terminal. There has to be some other pipeline also. So for that, there is another pipeline which was planned from NO towards Andhra. So those pipelines up to Srikakulam, those pipelines are still to come. So which is again affecting our own GAs, particularly Vizag, etc. Now, about the other point, what did you say?
About allowing multiple operators.
See, from our perspective, probably Sanjay was the right person to answer because they are already established in the market. But from our perspective, we are the new player. We are still, establishing ourselves. So as of now, what we personally see that the kind of investment that is going on in this business and idling of investment, what is concerning us is the delayed monetization of the assets that we are creating. So all these things are adding to our profitability, particularly from CGD business. So the kind of exclusivity period which is granted through PNGRB regulations would need to be relooked into, because finally, within the exclusivity period, every entity would like that most of their investments should come back to them, and from there onwards, they should start building on their profits. So, my take is that the kind of exclusivity period that has been granted needs a review, particularly for the new players.
Thank you, sir. Abhilesh, you have some views on?
Yeah, so my view is that when the competition is open, most of these competitors are going to come and only talking about the industrial customers. Nobody will be looking at supplying to domestic customers, right? Because domestic customer, you need to build a lot of other peripheral infrastructure of providing O&M service. And several other like collections, metering, there's so many other things which one has to do for domestic customer. So open the competition, then the competition is only for the purpose of industrial customer. So That's where I think it is essential that we need to see that the entity which is serving the large population remains competitive with respect to even supplying to industrial customers. Only picking cherry is not going to help.
Since I also work a lot with the power sector, yeah,
Can I
sorry.
just add to this third-party marketeer what you were asking? See, basically the market will decide. The market dynamics will decide. Today we may be having the situation what Sanjay is talking, or today what the legal angle and all those regulations and what we are talking. Because going forward, the way the GAs have been avoided, I'll just give an example. You have Sonipat, one GA is there, but outskirts of Sonipat, somebody else is there. So the person who is in the outskirts of Sonipat, tomorrow he may look forward to get into the Sonipat and get into that thing, and there are many GAs like that. So it will, today it looks difficult. Today it looks difficult to build up an infrastructure with this sort of this thing. But I do not know, because it's little difficult to predict that this cannot happen in future. It is market which is going to determine. We just cannot assume that nothing can happen.
Yeah, because, I also
Just one point, I mean, one of the things is like what we are basically witnessing now, but if we see there are two more areas which are not CGD specific, that is the CBG. The compressed biogas is already open for the entire,
yes.
And another is the LNG terminals. LNG, it is LNG for the transportation sector or wherever. This is still not GS specific. So that area is already there, and like Mr. Abhilesh was telling, that coming up with that, even that thing, I have in my GS a few LNG suppliers who are just targeting my industrial customers. Right. Absolutely, they are not making any infrastructure. They are just putting a cryogenic tank, bringing the LNG, and then supplying to the customer, and rest of the obligations are with the CGD operator. So that is another area which is already there, which has been diluted for the LNG terminals as well as the compressed biogas.
Yeah. Thanks for raising up this, compressed biogas, because that was also on my, wish list. The government has very, aggressive plans for, CBG, and they believe that, over a 2-3 year period, they would like to ramp it up to something like 15 million tons per annum, 5,000 into, let's say, 3,000 tons per unit. So just wanted to have a perspective on from my esteemed panelists. Do they see, CBG as a major contributor to the overall gas pie? And how does the CBG business affect, the CGD player? Is it going to be a competitor, or is it going to be a complement which, helps you achieve the business volumes? Yeah, sure.
No, let me start with that. It is going to be a complement. It is not going to be a competitor for a CGD. And with the CGD synchronization policy, which we have already implemented, this is going to be a great complementary factor for the CGD business. Because the pricing structure of the CBG, what is being decided today, and even if it is going to slightly change in future also, this is going to complement all the geographical areas. And of course, the CBG plant setup itself is a challenge today, like all the entrepreneurs and the other people, those are also trying to enter into this, are facing. But there are a lot of facilitation which, from the government side, from various sectors, particularly from the banking sector, to give them assistance, financial assistance is going on. So we per se, the OMCs, those who are into the CGD business, we are keenly watching this, and we are also participating in putting up CBG plants. And we are quite hopeful that, because we are looking for a 15 million pie, 15 million ton gas pie in this. So we are looking forward to this. And with all these plants, once it comes up, this is going to be a complementary factor for this. Okay.
So encouraging. Mr. Rai, you've shared his views about, CBG being a major player and it being, help to the CGD segment.
Sure, I'm very happy to. So I think from our point of view, the largest part of our operations are in Punjab. Okay? The largest number of CBG plants that are coming up are also probably in Punjab, given the agricultural aspect of the state. I think our perspective is that, in slight disagreement to my colleague here, is that there will be some tensions and conflicts between CBG and CNG, right? Frankly, the fact that CBG is excluded from all the PNGRB regulations does violate exclusivities, right? You know, frankly, all the capital investment that we're putting in to build a CNG ecosystem, okay, we're putting in capital investment to encourage people to convert, will be prejudiced by the fact that somebody else, without making any significant investment, is going to go in and get access, is going to go and take advantage of the ecosystem that I've spent my time and money creating. Okay? However, CBG at the end of the day, once you set up your plant, is essentially a trading business, right? You have to buy your source at a certain price, you have to sell it at a certain price. I think a lot of people have been dragged into this, have been drawn into this market because they see it as rather sexy, right? Obviously, there's the whole environmental social governance aspect of this. There's a lot of capital around the world which is focused on ESG, which has been attracted to this area. But ultimately, you have to make money, okay? And if on one side you are selling into a marketplace where, again, it's sort of market prices, but you're essentially buying a limited commodity from farmers who who right now will agree whatever price you give them, right? Once they see that you are reliant upon them, okay, they will squeeze your balls, okay? And I don't think that the durability or sustainability of CBG is there in the same way that, in terms of economics, are there in the same way that people perceive them today. Okay? My grandfather was a Punjabi farmer. Okay? So I know that he would what he would do in these circumstances.
Well, you know, I have had a long experience with the power sector, and I have experience with the biomass power projects. Typically, I saw that, you know, whenever first biomass power projects were set up, you know, biomass, whether it was wood chips or whatever, were available very cheap. But as the, you know, offtake becomes very strong and the farmers see that they are making, the prices really shoot through. So I do agree with you that there could be some concerns about that. Yeah, thanks. You know, I have another, you know, question about, you know, since probably we are, you know, running towards the close of the time. I'd like to ask all, you know, my fellow panelists, you know, a couple of questions. One is, are you getting all the support that you need from the state governments, from the central governments, and municipalities in terms of what is needed for rolling out the network? And what are your asks from the government? I mean, what would you ask the government to do in addition to, you know, what they are already doing? So I'd begin with, you know, Mr. Chadha, and I'll just come sequentially across to everyone.
I think the best person to answer is Mr. Manglani. I think every CGD industry is facing a very, very similar problem. The land-owning agencies which we interact, they have basically umpteen reasons to stop the work than to give the permissions. So that is what is being done. And the only thing is, okay, we have to respect the government authorities. We have, because they are the basically people who are responsible for all the traffic and providing permission to all the utilities. But the problem with city gas distribution is that mobilization of the work, the contractors, takes a big hit. So the point is that there's a lot of things which goes into building the infrastructure. I mean, we have to take the pipe to the site, we have to take the materials, the meters, everything to the site, and this entire thing and all the labor, whatever is there, that all goes as an idle force if there is the permission, or if there is a delay in getting the permission, or sometimes the permission is granted, but what if some reasons it is again withheld. And most of the times we have seen that the period for the best performance, what we get in the city gas distribution, is from October to possibly the start of monsoon, because invariably during the monsoon, the digging is closed at almost all the locations. So I think that is the area which needs big attention, and there has to be some rationalization on the timelines as well as the charges which are being charged by the landowning agencies.
Mr. Kumar, your wish list from the
You
government?
see, infrastructure laying permissions and the ROU charges, they are either state government subjects or the local bodies. Now, you can't have all of them as same unless, there is some act passed by the parliament that these charges will be same in all places, all municipalities, all village body, etc. IGL had largely very good experience in all its GAs. There are few, pockets, some one or two state where the charges are very high, we don't get permission. But better not to take those names here in the public forum. We are trying to deal with them. Otherwise, they are all good.
Mr. Pattanaik?
Yeah, it's very difficult to, to agree and disagree with this question. As Sanjay told, yes, these are subject of state matters. We being the federal government, we can't do. And representing a public sector enterprise, you got to just nod your head, that's all. No, notwithstanding that fact, the fact remains the delay in permission. We don't question the price of the permission. Okay, if some state is asking, they must be having 1001 reason to ask for that permission. But the question is, if you are talking of developing and you have an MWP, which you have a timeline for that, and if a national highway permission takes 2 years to come, then that becomes a question mark. And if tomorrow a ROU takes years to come, then that becomes a question mark. It's the monetary, I think people have taken that permission, the capex into their capex. Okay, this much I have to spend in the permission. But the delays are really killing. So, the government tried that one policy, one CGD policy. It was framed out. It was framed out, but the implementation, I don't know, it has been implemented in all these states. Some states are quite cooperative. Some states goes out of their way and gives you permission. They call you and discuss everything and all those things. Some states it is there, like Mr. Saraf told, you need to have aggressive follow-up. I really didn't understand what is aggressive follow-up, but anyway, that is what we do in real terms. But sometimes aggressive also become regressive. So that becomes a little difficult times. But that's an issue for all the CGD entities.
Okay. Mr. Jha, your wish list?
See, Indian Oil per se, we are predominantly in larger numbers in Bihar and followed by Tamil Nadu. We have mixed experience. In Bihar particularly, non-availability of policy is rather helping us. In the sense that now it is left to the district administration to take a call and what is to be charged, what is not to be charged. So we are getting advantage also from that kind of policy. One thing is for sure that district administration as well as the local representatives, maybe member of parliament, honorable MLAs, everyone wants that this connectivity should come to their district as early as possible. So as such, whenever we get in touch with them, they are always very welcoming. They always ask that what kind of support you need from us. So whenever we approach maybe district magistrate of the district, he say, particularly in Bihar, it has been very easy for us to get the clearances. In fact, we face problems in laying pipelines along national highways or maybe getting forest clearances, which are supposed to be the center subject. But it becomes a difficult thing for us. But but again, like in Tamil Nadu, there was a policy of that you dig and then you pay for it and advance payment kind of thing. But now I am told that things are changing. They are thinking of allowing dig and restore policy. So if that comes, Tamil Nadu will also be a good case for us. So this has been our experience.
Mr. Manglani?
Thank you. I think We don't have any wish list, I would say, per se, because we feel quite delighted to see the vibrancy of the authorities to react and support and proactively to the industry. So, if I may share with you and everyone in audience that, we are almost celebrating CGD achievements with 5,000 CNG stations. Roughly 50,000 industrial commercial today are using piped natural gas, and we are touching or we are kissing 1 crore home PNG. So these are achievements on the back of support from the state authorities and the central government. And when I coined the idea of one nation, one policy or a one charge, and PNGRB supported Mr. Saraf, ex-chairman of the PNGRB, and then there was a committee was formed, and we had this, understanding, as Mr. Sanjay said, that while you get a authorization, which is called concession abroad, but here we call it authorization, actually it should be a responsibility charter rather than authorization, actually. It's a responsibility which we undertake, not an authority. We don't have an authority to, we have a responsibility to deliver, actually. So it's a responsibility charter, actually, with a concession which is granted overseas. We know that is granted by PNGRB, which is a central subject, the gas, but actual work is actually in the state within the state authorities. So we developed a policy, which I was also part of it, and then it was supported fully by Ministry of Petroleum, Natural Gas and PNGRB. And finally, we saw so much support from government that it has been web hosted on a MOPNG site. Honorable Minister also supported, and then a lot of letters, communication has gone to the state authorities. And we are seeing, of course, it takes time in these things to, complete it. This is a major reform. When if you talk about one nation, one policy, it may not actually happen all that, in a lifetime. But significant portion of it will definitely will realize. We saw Rajasthan policy is a very progressive policy. Rajasthan has given a very progressive policy, and that is getting circulated to several state authorities. We will very soon see Assam policy coming up. Very, very progressive policy. Assam cabinet is, it's going on, public consultations going on currently. So I think there are, today, as everybody was saying, every one state authority is looking for an investment in the state, employment generation in the state. PNG is being seen as a modern fuel, that it is coming at a piped natural gas. Honorable Prime Minister said on the Red Fort that ab har ghar mein piped gas hoga jaise pani aata hai. This is a big statement. It shows a big support from the industry. But having said that, yes, we do a project on the roads and streets. It has to be calibrated so that there is no inconvenience. So state authorities are cautious in giving permissions. The way we have been suggesting, we have been always suggesting in all authorities, and in fact to the PNGRB, but now it is too late from a PNGRB side, that when authorization is granted, before it goes to the bidding, it's already in hindsight I'm saying, before it is bidding, there should be a acceptance from a state government that once an entity is authorized, see this whole system is continuing pre-PNGRB because we have not calibrated it well. Pre-PNGRB because there was no one. Now authority is credentials are being verified, a system of safety and process is being put in. So an authorization should have an acceptance of a state government, and in principle approval is granted. That when you are authorized entity of a PNGRB, you have a permission to lay pipelines subject to some bank guarantee for doing a proper conduct. If you don't conduct properly, we issue notice to you. If you don't rectify, we take away. So basically, you go on laying the pipeline. It is in the interest of everyone, including state authorities and the CGD. But that has not happened. Hopefully, someday these things will happen. Permission is the major issue. Permission is the key for the CGD entities, because this is one sector where PNGRB is asking financial closure. It means it is assuring that the entity which has received the authorization also has a resource to put on the ground. Now, the resources have been arranged, people have been recruited, officers have been taken. What we need is a permission to deploy 100% resource and commitment. So we need to see that CGDs are putting 80 to 90% energy on the ground rather than the offices to seek the permissions. So I think this realization is going on currently. We would see that state after state, we would certainly see a major reforms coming up on the state policy on CGD. And we are also seeing Government of India supporting on the front of on the policy making. We have seen, in fact, when the prices were high, we saw how government came back with the pricing committee. We have seen whether it is a national gas grid being developed, 9th, 10th, 11th round, it is all support of a government, actually. And I'll just touch before, a point which, of course, I wanted to speak was the open access, I think, is a very important point, actually. I think each one of us seen the benefit of an open access. We enjoy multiple banks giving us the facility. We enjoy multiple insurance companies operating and giving you fantastic service at your doorstep. We also know the period when open access of these sectors were not there. So I think open access is not questionable. Open access would happen. As Abhilesh said rightly, we need to see how do we bring the open access, actually. That's a precise reason the law has not provided auto switch of an open access. That if you do 8 years, open access is 8 year, 1 day is open access, that is not the law. Law says if the 8 years period is over, then PNGRB will assess the maturity of a GA. We'll see how we should take the call. So whole codification of regulations have to take place, whole process have to be rationalized, and CGD would like to see that there is no cherry picking. There is no cherry picking on open access, because we believe in Adani Total Gas and Adani and Total Energy Group that open access eventually, when it comes in a calibrated manner without cherry picking, when in fact could boost the enhancement of our volumes, actually. Because we have seen how banking has gone up, how the insurance has gone up, or any other areas. So it has to happen, maybe in the future sometime, but it has to happen in a very systematic way, professional way. A legislative process has to be properly developed, and an opportunity of CGD's companies to be given so that it is calibrated very well. Maturity of a GA has to be tested properly.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rai, would you want to share something?
So I think I would just add a little bit on open access. I think, my perspective is that in due course something will happen on open access. Frankly, as a relatively new CGD, it doesn't really impact me that much today. However, there are CGDs who are not necessarily run by this group here. Right? They're not necessarily professionally run. They're not necessarily run by groups who are well capitalized. Okay? There are CGDs out there, or CGD authorized areas, where frankly no work has been done for going beyond the exclusivity period. And then what does the consumer do then? Right? And if the regulator doesn't see that and say, right, open access, right? There's consumers inside this area who have been waiting for gas for X number of years beyond the period of exclusivity, okay? And he doesn't allow open access to happen, which is what's happening today. Right? The regulation has failed. The regulation has failed, right? The regulator needs to understand that his responsibility is to look after the consumer, right? Right now, if I'm honest, I'm not sure if anyone from the PNGRB is here, there's a confusion on the part of the regulator as to what their role is, whether it's just to follow a set of rules or whether it's to actually look after the consumer. And I think some of those things need to be clarified. If those things become clarified, the whole sector has the potential to really flourish. Right now, it's being held back by not just the things we discussed earlier, but also some of these aspects around regulation also.
Thank you. Mr. Abhilesh.
So one thing which I would like to also mention is that in India, I've seen the policies are individually driven. So if the helm of the affair, the person is sitting, he runs an organization, which is a government organization, its job is to facilitate the development of infrastructure. He runs it in a particular fashion, which attracts investment, which is pro-investment, pro-openness, and everything happens. But then the regime change happens. And regime change happens, everything is completely taken 360-degree turn, right? So that happened. So the same thing happens at the government level also. A particular head of the ministry is propagating the investment in CGD sector or in the gas infrastructure, and suddenly regime change happens. So the policies which are to be framed by government should not be individually driven, but should be driven by the vision of the government itself. And there has to be a continuity. There has to be continuity to the understanding level of the person. If you have even committed verbally during road shows or during any other in a forum, that has to be honored by successive regime also. That's what I think is a very, very important point.
Thank you. Thanks to all my panelists. We are a bit above time, so I'd like to summarize. I think there's a fair amount of optimism about the future of the CGD business. This is a business which is here to stay. There are short-term challenges in terms of high gas prices, but the House believes more or less that this kind of decoupling which has happened between oil and gas prices, which has made CGD temporarily the viability has been impacted. That's going to be a short-term phenomena, and I think on the long term, CGD will remain not only cleaner but also much cheaper. I mean, very reasonable, source of clean energy to myriad consumers. However, for that, infrastructure needs to be ramped up, and government support in terms of timely clearances and all those things will be quite critical. But at the same time, it's quite encouraging to hear that most state governments are fairly proactive and they are taking steps which will make the process of laying down the infrastructure very much more timely, hopefully in the future. And also there is a consensus that regulations need to be put in place for open access so that the consumers can benefit from greater competition. Thank you.